In a land of ruins, Jerusalem stands silent, its glory long faded. The barren streets echo with despair as a lingering darkness fills the air. The people of Israel, crushed by sin and sorrow, wander aimlessly. Hopes of restoration seem a distant dream overshadowed by their despair. Amidst the chaos, a voice calls softly. Ezekiel, a humble prophet, emerges as a beacon of hope. His heart yearns for God's message to be heard. As the Spirit of the Lord moves, Ezekiel feels a stirring within. He knows his mission to speak to the dry bones of his people, a prophecy of life. He recalls the words of the Lord, grounding himself in the promise of restoration. Son of man, can these bones live? He hears in his spirit. With courage ignited by faith, Ezekiel answers, O Lord God, you know. A moment of divine connection sets the stage for the transformation ahead. Ezekiel stands in the desolate valley, eyes cast upon the multitude of bones. A profound silence envelops the scene. The air grows heavy as the Spirit of the Lord stirs within him, urging Ezekiel to speak, to breathe life into the dead. Though doubt lurks, the prophet feels an unyielding force compelling him toward action, light illuminating his face. God's voice echoes, prophesy over these bones and say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. With a deep breath, Ezekiel proclaims the Lord's command, his words resonating through the stillness like thunder. As he speaks, a tremor vibrates through the earth, bones stirring, moving closer, finding their rightful place. From the depths of despair, sinews and flesh begin to form upon the bones, a spectacle of divine restoration unfolding. Ezekiel marvels at the renewing of life, yet the figures lack breath, lying still as shells without vitality. God speaks again, prophesy to the breath, say to it, come from the four winds and breathe into these slain. With renewed faith, Ezekiel obeys, calling upon the winds to infuse life into those whom death had claimed. The breath enters them and they stand to their feet, a vast army of souls resurrected from the ashes of despair. Ezekiel watches, filled with awe as the Lord declares, these bones are the whole house of Israel. I will open your graves. As the Lord speaks, Ezekiel continues to stand amidst the dry bones, now clothed in tendons and flesh. A gust of wind sweeps across the valley, stirring the air with a divine energy. Ezekiel lifts his voice, come, O breath, from the four winds and breathe into these slain. At his command, the four winds gather, swirling around the valley, a sign of life returning. Suddenly, the lifeless bodies begin to tremble, as if reacting to a divine pulse. Ezekiel watches in wonder as breath enters the bodies, and they rise to their feet, a vast army. The atmosphere thickens with divine presence, echoing with footsteps of restoration. These bones are the whole house of Israel, the Lord reassures Ezekiel, his voice resonating through the valley. The Lord declares, I will open your graves and bring you up from them, my people. Ezekiel feels the waves of hope wash over the people as they witness the miraculous transformation. The once scattered bones now stand united, filled with the Spirit of God. A chorus of voices rises, proclaiming faith and gratitude for their restoration. Ezekiel, overwhelmed, bows his head in reverence, recognizing God's mercy. The Lord speaks again, I will put my spirit in you, you shall live and be my people. With every word, the valley vibrates and the air buzzes with renewed purpose and promise. The people begin to share their stories of despair, contrasting their new hope. A voice rises among them, sharing tales of their past exile, tears mixing with joy. Ezekiel feels the weight of their stories and the joy of their restoration intertwining. He realizes the significance of this moment. It is a new beginning for Israel. The Lord commands them to spread the news of their restoration and revival. With renewed strength, they set forth to share their miracle with the world. Ezekiel stands watching, a smile on his face, heart swelling with hope. The valley, once desolate, now echoes with the sounds of life and joy. God's promise fulfilled, Israel rises with new purpose into the future he ordained. Ezekiel stood in the valley, awash in wonder, as a divine command echoed in the air. Prophesy to the breath, the Lord instructed. He lifted his voice, proclaiming to the winds, calling forth the life-giving breath that would restore the slain. Suddenly, a mighty wind surged through the valley, tangible and powerful, stirring the very dust beneath Ezekiel's feet. The lifeless bones began to rattle and come together, forming a grotesque yet awe-inspiring framework of humanity once more. Tendons appeared and flesh enveloped the figures, breathing new identity into the shadows that once lay dormant. Ezekiel watched, heart racing, as the lifeless bodies transformed into a mighty army, ready and waiting for purpose. Then God commanded, more prophesy to the breath and let it enter them that they may live. The breath, like a divine force, surged from the four corners of the earth, filling each body with life and vitality. They stood up, flesh alive, hearts beating, a vast multitude united as one, ready to fulfill God's purpose. Ezekiel's heart swelled with awe, witnessing the fulfillment of God's promise, a symbol of Israel's restoration. Fear and reverence gripped his soul. The valley pulsed with renewed hope, reverberating with the breath of life. God's sovereignty stood unchallenged, showcasing his power to resurrect, restore, and redeem his chosen people. As the mighty army stood in the valley, a hush fell over them as they awaited God's command, their eyes filled with purpose and expectation. Ezekiel stepped forward, feeling the weight of the prophecy, understanding that he was the voice through which God's promise would echo. With faith in his heart, he proclaimed God's words, calling them to rise and live, a declaration that resonated through the valley. As the breath of life filled the air, the soldiers began to stir, a powerful reminder of God's ability to transform even the direst situations. In that moment, hope surged within them, for they realized they were destined to be restored, a fulfillment of God's relentless promise. Ezekiel turned to the people, urging them to recognize God's power, reminding them that no situation is beyond his reach or his mercy.